You're about to see the book of Exodus with new glasses in a way that many of you have never seen it before. In Exodus, there's this decree to kill all the newborn male children. And Satan was behind this decree because God had given a prophecy that in 400 years, his people would be delivered. Meaning that a deliverer would be coming on the scene at some point 400 years later. Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 and 14. So in Exodus, there's this decree to kill all the newborn male children, just like there's a decree to kill all the new children under 2 years old when Jesus was born. Now we're in Exodus chapters 1 and 2. All right, Moses grows up, he kills an Egyptian, and then he goes into the wilderness for 40 years. Just as Jesus, when he grows up, goes into the wilderness for 40 days. Then Moses returns from the wilderness after 40 years to do the work of delivering his people. Just as Jesus returns after 40 days in the wilderness to do the work of delivering his people. When Moses returns from the wilderness, he begins performing miracles through the power of God, and the people begin to follow him. Just as Jesus, when he returns from the wilderness, he begins to perform miracles, and people begin to follow him. Moses' work was to set the people free from their bondage, their slavery, right? They were slaves in the land of Egypt. You follow me? They served the Egyptians. Jesus' work was to free his people from their sins. We are slaves to sin. We are servants to whom we obey. So Moses freed the people from Egypt. Jesus freed the people from sin. Do you see what Egypt represents? Now, how were the Israelites set free in Exodus? Through a Passover lamb, right? Just as it would be the blood of Christ to set people free from their sin. In Exodus chapter 20, Moses gives the commandments of God just as Jesus gave the commandments of God in his ministry. The same commandments taught in a new way. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Matthew 22:40. In Exodus chapters 1 through 20, you're seeing a foreshadowing of the ultimate deliverer who is Christ. In Exodus 24, Moses was going up the mountain to meet God. The people watch as Moses ascends up the mountain to meet God, and a cloud receives him out of their sight, right? So Moses is received into this cloud out of their sight. When Jesus ascended to heaven, the Bible tells us in Acts chapter 1 and verse 9, now when he had spoken these things, while they watched, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. It says not a coincidence, it's a pattern. So what happens next? Moses is there on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus, after his resurrection, is on earth with people for 40 days, and then he ascends into heaven, and a cloud receives him out of the sight of the people. Now, Moses was receiving sanctuary instructions when he went up the mountain. And when Jesus ascended to heaven, he became the high priest of the heavenly sanctuary, according to Hebrews chapter 8. Now, what were people saying about Moses when he went up the mountain for 40 days? Now, when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, come make us gods that shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Exodus 32:1. They all thought that Moses was gone for good. They didn't believe he was coming back. So what did they do? When Moses delayed to come down, the people created an image to a beast and they started worshiping it. In Revelation chapter 13, what are people doing? They are worshiping this beast. From Exodus 24 all the way to Exodus 32, Moses is up the mountain. The people don't expect him to come back, and when they aren't expecting it, he returns. When nobody expected it to happen. When he returned, he asked, who is on the Lord's side? Come unto me. So the righteous went to Moses, but those who were worshiping the image of the beast did not. So what are people saying today? That Jesus is not coming back. Listen, man isn't powerful enough to put this together. These writings are even beyond the authors. The Old Testament consists of books written before Jesus' birth, some nearly 1,500 years before. And this pattern is told over and over again in different ways by about 40 authors. This isn't the only parallel in Exodus. The Bible is packed with these. Listen to this. In the book of Genesis, on the third day of creation, the first fruits came forth from the ground. On the third day of Jesus' rest after his crucifixion, Jesus, the first fruits, came forward from the ground. You should be looking for Jesus all throughout Scripture because all Scripture is about him. Thanks for watching.